You're listening to Find the Good News, Episode 23, The Way She Sees It, featuring Heather Arsement. This episode of Find the Good News is sponsored by Parker Brand Creative Services, a branding agency that thinks sideways, pushes forward, and gets your brand up. Check out our work at parkerbrandup.com. Would you like to help make sure I'm asking my guests the really good questions? Just visit findthegood.news and click the questions tab. I'll see if I can get your question dropped in the fishbowl. Each episode, my guests will dive deep, select 3 random questions, and if yours is selected, I'll ask it on the show. That's findthegood.news. The lovely thing about Find the Good News is seeing one guest lead directly to the next. Each visit, I get to catch a special glimmer in the eyes of the person across from me, and I know that means they've had that aha moment. They want to tell me about someone good in their life. That's exactly how I came to connect with conceptual photographer Heather Arsement, through that golden thread that links one guest to the other. I like the magical idea of this unseen thread, and it's especially relevant in this conversation with Heather, as she has an affinity and eye for the fantastical herself. Heather looks around the Southwest Louisiana landscape, and where we may just see a door, a tree, a rock, an empty lot, things that we blow by quickly, things to be barely considered, she sees the raw goods that, used in careful and creative combination, will come together to reveal a new reality. In this visit, for just a bit, I get to put on Heather's glasses. When you get to know someone, really spend a little time with them and ask essential questions, you can almost get a glimpse of the way they see things. You get to see all of the parts, the little thoughts, experiences, joys, worries, and struggles. You hear the moments in their history that, on the surface, may seem insignificant, but when placed together in concert, makes a more interesting individual. In that way, I'd say Heather is a lot like her works. Her interest and the detail of her life have a direct impact on the fine art that she produces. We had a lot in common, especially in the pop culture and entertainment arena, which just further illustrates how the ingredients of a life can blossom in entirely different directions to create unique people and works. I had a lot of fun talking to Heather. She is comfortable, friendly, kind. She reminded me that there's a world of wonder all around us, and sometimes it's just waiting to be revealed in the most ordinary places and things. If we could each see the world as Heather Arsement sees it for a little moment each day, that could be all it takes to turn a bad day good and make a good day even brighter.
Wake up, it's morning. You're dreaming up a story. I can hear the way it's going, 'cause you're laughing in your sleep on the path to your deliverance, and a holy wall of light pouring through your window.
Old news, bad news, fake news. Sometimes you just want to shut it all down and get no news at all. With Find the Good News, I aim to change that by focusing on good people doing good work. I visit with artists, educators, civic and spiritual leaders, musicians, business owners, students, volunteers, and everyday citizens who are using their creativity, resources, and talents to bring hope and happiness to their corner of the world. In each episode, I dig into the hearts and minds of my extraordinary guests. We have street-level conversations about relatable things going on in their lives. Discover the critical life experiences that shape them, the perspectives that drive them, and the fundamental beliefs that are anchoring them to a path of goodness. There's a lot of news in the world. My name is Oran Parker, and I'm going to find the good.
And I love you just as well.
When I ask somebody to come on the show, especially if I don't know them, because this is the first time we've met, I go and look at what kind of footprint they have online. And then when I went to look at your work, I said, oh, wait, I've seen your work.
I didn't know if you'd seen it, so I actually brought a piece, and then I have just a book that I print test prints with. It's just it's nothing professional, like portfolio, quote unquote. That it's just test prints because I almost hate the digital, because they're so different from seeing it online than seeing it in person.
Yeah, right. No, you're right.
Even though I do digital photography and a lot of stuff with Photoshop, it's just completely a different experience seeing it in person versus online.
I totally agree. That's the difference between going. My wife and I were just talking about that this morning because I only just recently started using Instagram. And honestly, one of the reasons I started using it was because I found that the audience for the show kind of seems to live there. And I'd really not tiptoed into that world. But getting into that world and looking at my own habits, especially regarding photography, I was like, okay, so what am I doing here? How many times do I actually stop and really, really deeply look at these images? Or how often do I just look at it and go, oh, that's cool, and give it, a double tap and give it, a like, and then go to the next thing. So, and then the other thing I questioned was how often am I really reading what people are writing? So I'm trying to actually slow down with that and use that tool a little differently. And, so I'm looking at the pictures and reading. So I'm trying to train myself to do more because there's so much, I guess, deeper content than what I was realizing. I say all that to mean I still think seeing art and photography in person is totally different because you've got a different investment, of your time. When you go to a gallery, especially if it's opening night or something like that, you've made the time, you've taken the trip, you're there. So it's just a different, I don't know, maybe awareness that takes place of what went into the art of the photography. You're looking at what you do. You're in I don't know what you'd call that type of photography. Maybe there's a term for it, but
I call it conceptual photography.
Okay, right on.
Fine art, because you basically all fine art. The term fine art means that you're creating work for yourself.
Okay,
you're not. No one's commissioning you to do it. You're just creating it for yourself. Now you can sell it. I mean, that's the ultimate goal eventually if you want to, but you just started creating for yourself. So that's all that means. It's just a fancy smancy term.
Conceptual photography.
Yeah, it's conceptual art, yes.
Yeah, I think it's really cool because when I first started looking at it, I said to you and I and my wife and maybe your husband too, we have a lot in common as far as what our interests are, it looks like. Especially like the fantasy world and the sci-fi and things that you're doing. I thought it was really fun. You did a series where you had like King Kong climbing local buildings.
Yes.
Can you tell me about that?
Yes.
Like what inspired that?
That inspired because I had $1 for every person that told me, if you would just do Louisiana themed stuff, you could sell your work. So I said, I got you. I'm going to do Louisiana themed stuff. I'm going to go and take some pictures of some like landmarks that have been photographed millions of times, and I'm going to put my spin on it. Yeah. And I love movie posters. One of my favorite things to do when I was young was go to was it Curtis Mathis?
Yo, Curtis Mathis. Wow, yeah, it was Curtis
and
Mathis.
And just, look at the covers, and I just love doing that.
Can I tell you something? I mean, not to segue too far off into this, but this is just the first time, not the first time, but it's slowly starting to sink in on me how valuable something was in my life, and I did not know it till I visited. You just said that, and then Danny Elaine, who I just visited with, said the same thing. My dad opened a video store when I was in junior high school, 6th grade. And a lot of people who live around here remember Bo's videos. It was before there was like the big blockbusters and Hollywood Video and things like that. But my whole junior high through high school life, that's where I worked in the afternoons after school and on the weekends, and all my friends worked there. And, we watched a lot of movies, but more than that, we had to clean those shelves constantly. So the movie boxes were, just like you said, they were impacting me, and I had no idea that they were. But then you said it, and Danny said it too. Like that was art to you too. Well, it was like a gallery.
It impacts my work a lot because when you're looking at a cover for a movie, you have to get that whole story. They have to convey the whole story to suck you in from just that movie poster.
Yeah.
And I think that reflects a lot about my work. I'm trying to tell a story
Yeah.
through one image.
Yeah, what's happening in here? Who is this person? What's this environment?
And it could be, you could interpret it a completely different way than I intended it, which is fine, but it's all about telling a story.
Yeah. I could see that, and you're doing a lot of Photoshop work, it seems like, too, where you're blending two things together, which I really love that. I love seeing the components and how...
It's compositing,
yeah.
is the term or whatever.
Yeah, right. I love composites. I love seeing it, and then I love going back and looking at all the elements that you brought in. And what's cool, it seems like, is you're able to, as a photographer, you're going out and taking shots and kind of creating your own elements. Mm-hmm. There was one piece in particular, and I don't know the name of it, but it was like a white wolf or a wolf in front of in the snow, or
yeah. That's actually Sam Houston Park.
Is it?
Is the background? That's Sam Houston Park. It's a trail that I've photographed a million times in a million different ways because it's pretty cool, and it's the quartz. Like shards of quartz rocks that people usually wrap for jewelry or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, my kids had some, so I took pictures of it and I created the ice castle with those.
Oh wow! Okay.
So I built it up like that in the computer, and then I made it snow and all that, and added the wolf.
It definitely sets your work apart. I mean, that to me, after you do that for a while, and maybe you can answer this, I know we work in sort of a creative industry as well, and it does make you process the world a little differently through your eyes. And so I imagine for you, when you're working on pieces like that, you're probably looking around at everything as an element of design, so to speak.
Yes, like I don't know if this piece right here, I mean, I know you can't.
We can always take a picture of them, put it online, which of course we just said pictures of pictures, don't we?
But yeah, I mean, the piece of it looks like a geisha girl in front of a tree with it's snowing.
Yeah.
That tree is actually in the empty lot across the street from the Frosty factory. Okay. And I live in the neighborhood near there, so I passed it almost every day. And there's something about that tree, it just the way that the branches bent down. I was like, that looks like icicles to me.
Yeah.
So I took a picture of it, and then I took a picture of me separately in my backyard, because underneath the tree was a whole bunch of bushes and stuff, and I was like, snakes? No. I am not going there. So I took a picture of me separately in my backyard, and I composited it together, and then I made it look like it was a winter scene. It's
very interesting. I mean, and not to dive off get too heavy too fast, but what you're saying reminds me of this Buddhist monk that I really like reading his work is Thich Nhat Hanh, and he's a poet and an incredible thinker and teacher. But one of the things that he talks about a lot is interbeing, and in that he talks about how you can look at a tree in the winter, but when you look at it in the winter, even though there may be no leaves on it, if you see the true nature of the thing, you do see the leaves. And what he means, as I understand it, is not that you actually see the leaves physically there, but you understand that they will be there. So because they will be, they kind of already are. The process is already there. And it sort of reveals the beautiful nature of a thing full scope, instead of just like seeing it only in the way it is at that moment. Your ability to look at that tree and see something else, in a way you could really probably look at that at different times in your life and see something different each time, and take new pictures and put a whole new piece together. Yeah. Sort of kind of cracking open the beauty of something beyond what we drive by every day.
It's a trash tree, as far as I know. I don't know what kind of tree it is.
Well, how many people could just drive by and disregard that tree? You know, and for some reason it has caught your eye, and then your ability to see what it really could be, and then take your talents and crack that open. That's kind of a beautiful thing. So where does this start for you? I mean, did you intend to become a photographer? I mean, is that how your path started? You go, I love photography, I'm interested in it, or what led you to that?
It was kind of weird how I fell into it. My husband was a photographer in college, and He helped with the yearbook and stuff like that. So he had an old, like the first digital Canon camera.
Okay. Right when it came out, like... Okay.
Yeah, that's what he had.
That transition.
And I had my daughter, and I decided I wanted to take some like baby pictures of her, and they were horrible. And I was like, you know what? I think I want to learn how to do this. So I started doing the typical flowers and, you know, like you do when you're trying to learn your camera.
Some still
and
life and practicing, yeah.
I was like, no, this is not me. So I took a whole album of music.
Yeah.
And I took each song. And I did a picture based on each song.
Okay. You let the music inspire
you.
Okay.
Yeah, basically. So I did like I didn't even know it was a thing. Y'all, I didn't know it was a thing. But I did a conceptual picture of each one. And I don't have that many friends. I mean, I have one friend that let me take pictures of her, and she's beautiful. But when I want to take a picture at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, what model do I have?
Finding subject matter, yeah.
It's me. So I'd use myself. So that's how it started. So that's how I became a self-portrait photographer.
Self-portrait photography. Okay. Yeah. I didn't realize that was a thing.
Yeah, I didn't know it was a thing either, but it is a thing. I
just learned that from you. I didn't know that was a thing. So a self-portrait photographer.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you're your own model. Is that how you still do most things?
Yes. Yes. 90% is me. I use my daughter a lot because she just lets me to practice if I want to practice something. And also, but I recently collaborated with one of your other guests, Lydia Walls, and she gave me a poem. And she said, I love your work. When I think about this poem, I think about, your type of style. Do you want to collab?
Yeah.
And so I was super nervous because I don't like working with other people because I only have myself to impress, basically. You're not doing it for others. You're doing it for yourself. And if others like it, then... Yeah, that's fine. So I was super, super nervous at first. But when we got to the place, like I drew out like what I thought, would go with it. And
really? Okay.
Yeah, we drew out. We met, had coffee. We met. We talked. And I was like, when we talked about it, stuff like that. And she went home, drew it out. And she's like, yes, that's it. When I got to the location, it went beautifully.
Where did y'all shoot that at?
There is a wooded field behind a crawfish place down Highway 14.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where we did that.
Something people drive by every day.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to find wooded locations.
No, yeah, you're right. You're right.
But and places that maybe you don't want to trespass on.
Sure,
what I'm saying. So just. This they don't use it for anything. It's huge. I mean, it's acres and acres and acres of woods.
Right.
So we did it there, and it just was easy, and she was a dream to work with, and we just were like kindred spirits, you know.
Those pictures actually stood out to me. I remember seeing those, and then that's kind of when she brought your name up. I go, I remember those pictures because they're really stunning. And I thought they were just, eye-catching and something about... actually, I did say something to her. I thought she was smoking. And she said, oh, no, that was my breath. It was cold, apparently.
No, that's Photoshop.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, well, okay, that's even more impressive. I didn't realize that. So I didn't even ask her. She said it was my breath. And I went, oh, must have been cold out. And I thought that was really pretty fascinating.
Her in the woods... it's real there. Like we shot it in location at location. Sometimes I shoot the location separate and me separately and put it together. That's much harder to do.
Yeah, the lighting changes. And,
and I'm a natural light photographer and I don't use any lighting and I try to shoot, when it's cloudy outside. That way I don't have to worry about all that.
Yeah, you don't have hot spots and things like that.
Yeah, just very even lighting and I can add lighting and post. And, like that piece, I think I worked on that about, not counting shooting time, because that was like 10 minutes we were out.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
wow.
I shoot for one picture. I'm not like your typical photographer that shoots different mini poses. I know exactly what I want. I'm going to shoot that pose. That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
So my average shooting time is 10 to 15 minutes. Like, done.
Wow.
Got the shot, done. Let's go. you know. So I got home. I worked on it about 4 to 6 hours.
Okay.
Post working that.
That's really not a long time. I mean, for what it turned out like, I mean, I think a lot of people would be surprised to hear that. I am. I thought it looks like you have more time in it.
Yeah, and I get, what's the word, like, you know, just in a zone. Like, I don't want to stop. I don't want to eat. I don't want to go to the bathroom. I don't want to, you know, do anything. So if I'm going to do something, I have to have plenty of time to edit because I won't stop. And my husband's like, yeah, are you going to eat supper? And I'm like, no, I don't want to. I
understand that.
It's like...
What is that? Because I understand that, and everybody that does a trade or a craft has that zone that they get in. I've gotten into that place several times, but there are particular things here that are like that for me. For me, logo design's that way. Usually I sink in and I don't like to be interrupted. I do get interrupted, but I get into a space where I'm like, I know what I need to do. And it goes very quickly. Everything just seems to fall in line especially once I find my stride. And then it's like the whole world tunes out.
I think it's like almost you know, what's the word? Euphoric.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm saying it's almost like you're on a high kind of, you know, non-drug, non-alcoholic,
sure.
You know, like high, your adrenaline's, I mean, as soon as I get an idea, I get my camera out, my adrenaline is just pumping.
Yeah. So your brain's firing off. It's clear. You know what you want to do. Mm-hmm. Isn't that something? I mean, there's so many things in the world you can tell when someone's had that space because it just works out. I often wonder if that isn't, I don't know. I guess we could say it's just chemical, but for me, there's a spiritual aspect to it. There's something else going on there. I used to go do these talks with design students. I haven't done one in years, but I've talked about this on the show quite a bit, but I have this belief that creativity is like a force. You know, you probably heard, if you listen to it, it's like a force, like love or anything else. And it's outside of us, but it's inside of us too. And so for me, I can tell when I've kind of like almost like a little waterway. You know, you see these little pictures of like a big river, but then there's like this little tiny waterway snaking out and making all these little curves to get somewhere. For me, it feels like that. Like my little tiny creativity is like worming its way towards this big river. And then when it connects to it, it just sort of becomes a part of that stream, you know, and you can just feel it. Something is different. And maybe there's arguments to say that's just chemical, but I don't know. I tend to feel like something else happens. I don't know. Something connects for me outside of my mind. It's just a heart thing. I don't know. It sounds like you kind of get into the same river.
Yeah, it's like a different plane. Like, don't talk to me. Don't bother me. Don't just like I'm in the zone. Like,
yeah. So it sounds like all this happened fairly quickly for you then. So your husband was a photographer. You start taking pictures, and you're going, I like this. I have a knack for this. Are you formally trained in any way, or is this all self-taught?
Completely self-taught. I've been working with Photoshop for a very long time.
Just on your own, right?
Yes.
Like just outside of...
Even before I did photography, I would play. Because he had it.
Okay.
So I just taught myself.
Right.
So I would just play and do fun graphics, put my friends' faces in Britney Spears' body and just
messing around with it. But you learn how to tighten the screws with that. Yeah, I get you.
So I knew it already. And so I've had a lot of experience. And what's difficult with Photoshop, and you probably know, is there's like 15 different ways to do one thing.
Sure, everybody's got their own little way.
It's like weird, you know?
Yeah. You know, talking about that, about working in Photoshop, I recently, with one of my coworkers, we were talking about a project, and she was having some difficulty kind of executing what I had asked to be done. And so I went inside her desk, and we did sort of like a little 10-minute tutorial. And I didn't want to do the work, because if you do it, you're not passing it on to somebody. And we're on a team, so it's very important that gets shared. And so, you know, I sat down and I kind of showed her the way I would do it. And what I realized in that, and this is no slight on the designer, I mean, we're on the same team, so we're definitely, I want to make sure it's clear that I support this person, but it was like, wow, she said, I would have never done it that way. I would have thought to do it that way, and that works really good. And it made me realize how often we don't share our processes, with other people, and how valuable it is. Just that little 10 minutes that we spend in there. She'll use those same combinations of things I did now in her other designs, and maybe take those in new directions. And I thought, how much value is there in those little tricks that I've learned or discovered by accident, messing around, like you said, sticking people's faces on other things, or trying to make a lightning bolt really look like it's coming out of a cloud, or maybe like you do making Lid's breath, knowing that that's digitally placed in there. Sharing that stuff is just incredibly valuable. And as I say all that because I was looking through a lot of the links that you share, and one of them was a comment about that. You'd shared something that said that you look at other artists as your competition or your inspiration.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, that says a lot about you, that you shared that, because I'm assuming you feel like other artists are your inspiration.
Yes, that is one thing that I'm consciously is on social media, because I know how hard it is being an artist and being a local artist. And, most artists are pretty shy and, not
Sure.
very outgoing people. So I'm consciously trying to share other people's work.
Yeah.
Because, it's just hard. It's hard
Yeah.
to get your stuff out there.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, it's weird because we have all these tools now, and at the same time, it's like, I don't know, the only way I can think about it is like dumping everybody's got a marble, and a different color marble, and they're all pretty, but then you dump them into a big barrel together and shake them up, and it's like, well, where's mine? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what it feels like sometimes with social media, because now there's so much of it. Danny and I were kind of talking about that, where, not in the 90s, before the internet really had taken hold. I mean, like, it was a part of life. It wasn't a part of everyday life for everybody. So to just be seen, you had to show your work physically to somebody, or get in a gallery, or really push it in a whole different way. And I don't know, it kind of goes back to what you were saying about showing physical pieces. I mean, in a way, that can be a lost art. I mean, it could be a lost art in and of itself, just making the time to put together pieces that are going to be shown physically. I think we're lucky, though, in this area, because we do have galleries and we do have museums and things like that that spaces to show our work. And you do have there's a pretty strong art collective, it seems like. Are you involved in any collectives?
I was. I was with Southwest Louisiana Art, and it kind of, had to dissolve. But, I've shown at the Henning House, which is, I love that gallery.
I do too.
I love that gallery.
I like that space a lot.
And they've been very, open, because my stuff is a little wacky. So
that fits into their chaos theory show. It seems like
I was in I did the King Kong and the Loch Ness monster, the border lock monster.
Yeah, the border lock. I love that piece, actually.
So that was at Chaos Theory. But yeah, and I did have a solo show
really?
Last year. Yeah, at the gallery and Central School, the Art Associates Gallery.
Yeah.
So
That's downstairs, right?
No, it's upstairs. That's the last gallery, the opposite to the Mardi Gras Museum.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was thinking 1911.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I might have seen your work there too, because I used to go up there quite a bit.
I had like 24 pieces in that show, so that was quite daunting. But yeah, I mean, we have those two galleries, but other than that,
yeah. I mean, as far as local work, I see a lot of local restaurants and places like that do display local work too.
Yeah, I did Stellar Beans once, you know, stuff like that. But
how effective is that for you? That type of thing, those little galleries. As far as getting your name out there, and do you receive? My question, I guess, is just narrowly: do you get feedback from those galleries? Do you go, "Oh, someone contacted me because they saw my work here," when it's in a restaurant or a public space like that?
Not really. I sold one piece when it was at Stellar Beans, because a wife really wanted a piece, and her husband was smart and bought it for her. So, but other than that, I really haven't had much luck. And I've also found that, like, a solo show versus, like, a show with a lot of different artists, you're going to do better at the lot of different artists.
Really? Now, why is that?
Because when it's a solo show, who's going to show up is going to mostly be your friends, families.
I see.
And
they are already
colleagues.
Exposed to your art.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
if you have a gallery like Henning House where they're doing like works of women, for instance, which
Sure.
I've been in several times, you've got, you know, friends, the other artists, friends, family members and cousins and stuff, and they might see your piece and they might like it, you know. So it's much, you know, it's kind of weird, but it's the opposite.
Yeah,
That,
no, I
you know,
get it.
And I'm happy, I know it.
You've probably heard me mention filming videos, building websites, creating logos, or building brands on this podcast. Well, there's a good reason for that. I'm a brand builder, and my brand is Parker Brand Creative Services. My team and I have built countless brands in the Gulf Coast region, and a lot of our work in the travel and tourism industry is experienced across the country and honestly the whole world. We have our specialties: web, logo, package, and whole brand design, as well as video production and photography. But the reality is, we function as a full-service advertising agency to businesses that don't really mesh well with larger advertising agencies or just don't want to have in-house creative departments. But don't listen to what I say. Just go to our website, parkerbrandup.com, and take a look at what we do. We're a show it, don't say it team. Okay, you should definitely say it too, but you know what I mean. That's parkerbrandup.com. We think sideways, we push forward, and we'll get your brand up.
So take this, you've earned it. A melody and chorus.
It does make sense. I mean, I like going to shows where it's just one person. I do. But I also like the collectives too. I mean, I can see what you mean, because you're getting up cross-pollinating and you discover
Yeah.
something, you're going, oh, I've never seen their art. Yeah, makes perfect
I mean,
sense.
it's a great honor to have a solo show. You know
Sure.
what I'm saying? I mean, it was a juried process, and you know, it was a great honor, you know, and you know, I had a good show up, but it was mostly my friends and family, and I realized, oh, well, duh, well, that makes sense, you know.
Sure.
It's gonna be, you know, at a group showing, there's gonna be a lot more people that's gonna come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, as far as being an artist, a photographer? I mean, well, let me back up. It's interesting because you're not a portrait photographer. And I actually like that, because there are and I don't mean this as a slight to portrait photography, because there's some wonderful portrait photography, but there is a lot of it in any community, not just here, but everywhere. And I think some of that is because of just access to equipment and information. Prices have really changed in what you can accomplish with prosumer level gear. And you can get an education online for $20. You can get
I don't even have pro gear.
Really?
No, I really don't. I mean,
What do you mean?
I have a Canon T3i.
Yeah.
It's 4, which is, they're like down like 8 now, I think is the model.
Sure.
And it's a crop sensor.
Yeah.
You know, pro level is going to be your full sensor.
Like a 5D, something like that.
Yeah. So I don't even have, you know, a $2,000-$3,000 camera.
I got to back you up on that, because let me tell you, this is an interesting subject for me, because we shoot video and we do photography, but it's mostly commercial photography. But when I've got a bunch of T2Is, and I use those for my video projects as my, you know, C and D cameras, but sometimes I'll throw that T2I and put a lens on there and put a handle on it and an eyepiece with a microphone, and I'll come back here to start editing, and the footage from that is the footage that I like the best. It looks, I'm a natural light. I too also like to shoot in natural light and play with the sun, and, you know, times a day, things like that. And I find that I like that stuff better. There's something, I don't know, it's not as clean. It just looks more human to me. It doesn't look as tailored. And I don't know. I mean, I go, hey, ultimately, what does the viewer think? You know, like when I watch it or I show it somebody some documentary or something I've done, I'll go, what do you think about that? They never go, oh, I can tell you. They're not sitting there going, oh, I can tell you shot that with this camera. Oh, that must have been the 5D. Oh, that was the C100. You know, and you're going, they can't tell. Then you don't want them to. It's all seamless. You want it to not look, you want them to feel something, not pick it apart technically. I think we can get caught up in that too much. Like, I guess the term is gearheads, where it's just like you gotta have the best piece of gear, and I don't know.
And I hate change. So, honey, let me have my teeth, until it just falls to the floor and breaks.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So I love it. My husband did have to give me a new tripod this year because my other one was the one that he was using in college.
Yeah.
And I still kept it because I'm like, you never know.
Sure. I'm the same way with gear, old gear especially. I would even say a lot of my camera gear is probably, to some people, it's probably dated, but I don't know. There's something about, and everybody says think outside the box, but, and I guess coming at it from like a mindfulness perspective and an awareness perspective, and just trying to focus in on something, I'm starting to find that I can be more creative inside the box. I guess lately I've been writing haiku poetry. And, I never really in my life, never really stopped to pay attention to it. I've heard it and what have you. But I bring that up to say there's a box with haiku poetry. You have a specific form that you have to follow. I find that as I stay in that box, my mind just cracks open, and I'm able to pour more into these 3 little sentences. Someone else might say, but I want to write, I have so much more to say. Which I guess would be, I have a bigger camera, I have a better camera, I have a better lens, I have a better tripod, I've got a crew. And I'm like, yeah, well, but here's 3 little lines that you can think on and meditate on, and I don't know, something clean about it. So I guess in a way it's similar to what you're saying. I mean, you have a tool, and you're going to use that tool to its maximum ability. And within that one thing, you can be infinitely creative. That's pretty amazing. You can almost get gridlocked if you have too many things.
I could use an assistant, though.
Yeah. Just some hands.
Just some hands.
I know. I know.
Can you carry that chair, please?
Right. Yeah.
That's the only difficult part about being by myself, shooting by myself, is being by myself,
Yeah.
Having to drag all the gear, wherever I need to be, and then,
Yeah. You ever feel like, though, sometimes there's like a little bit of peace about it? Like, have you ever been to a shoot and if you're like me, my anxiety gets up a little bit when I'm on a shoot, not like from a fear level, but just like, okay, I've got to get this ready and get that ready and bring this out there and that out there. And then you've got to compose yourself and get back into the frame of mind to actually do the shooting part. And you know what I mean? It's almost like 2 different spaces. I'm in workhorse mode, and now I'm in shooting mode.
No, because my adrenaline starts pumping the minute I walk out. I shut the door of the vehicle, or in my backyard, because I've done a lot of stuff in my backyard, or even just around the house, because I don't have a studio. I don't have any.
Everything's your studio.
Everything is my studio, like everything.
Yeah. So you're not lugging a bunch of stuff out to godforsaken places to do shoots, huh?
Sometimes chairs, and if I need to balance on something, or if I'm bringing props, or things like that I need.
Do the people you shoot, though, if there are people, it sounds like, well, really, maybe there's not a lot of people, right?
There's no one.
Yeah, so it's you. You're doing.
It's just me.
So the project with Lid was kind of unique then.
Very unique. To prepare for my solo show, I needed money.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's very expensive to print art.
Sure.
Okay. So I did do some fantasy things with some little girls. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't see it, but we can put a link to it.
With unicorns and stuff. So I basically had some unicorns. I shot them in a wooded area, and then put them in pretty princess dresses, and had them out there, and then I composited the unicorn, and then kind of made it look like a painting almost, And I did sell a few of those, and I did some Little Red Riding Hood things, things, fairy tale type things, and I did that specifically to raise money to be able to buy my art to do the solo show.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's expensive.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of branch out to do a little bit. But that stuff, I love doing it, and editing is my jam.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But I find myself get really bored when I do the same thing over and over and over again. So I did like 3 unicorns, and I was like,
You're done.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I gotta branch out creative.
Do you just let yourself get inspired and go do a shoot, or do you plan it out and go, hey, I want to do a series about XYZ, and then you kind of have the thought ahead of time and start planning those shoots?
I know that I have to do something whenever I can't stop thinking about it. So if I'm in the shower or about to go to sleep and I have an idea hit me, I don't necessarily write it down. Sometimes I do, but if I think about it and 2 weeks later I'm still thinking about it, it's got to happen.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay. Yeah, I wonder because see, I guess unfortunately I don't do as much art as I used to. Because of really the nature of what we do here is sort of deadline based, so a lot of our time gets consumed creating commercial work. But I do know back when I was illustrating more, I did have this feeling something would sort of spark an idea, and I'd go. And I remember the last thing I did that way was years ago. It was this little monster series I'd done, and it came from a conversation. A friend of mine made up a creature in his head. It was a blend of these 3 mythical creatures, and I was like, I want to draw that. So I went and drew it, and then I was like, that was kind of fun. I think I want to take other things and go, what happens if you blend Frankenstein and a pig? What happens if you blend an alligator and a crawfish? And and it would just mash up monsters. And so I did that until it was sort of done. And it was a weird just a conversation that inspired it. So I just wondered where that comes from for you. Is it sort of similar? It's just like something just like you drive by that tree and you're like, ooh, that's kind of cool. Do you ever go, I think I want to do a series of these things, these forgotten trees or something?
See, that's the thing that I really struggle with. And if you're an artist, you're supposed to do a series, especially if you want to work with galleries, which I'm really trying to branch out, into other cities and stuff and work with galleries, is you have to do a series. Well, once again, that's doing similar pieces back to back to back. And I don't know. It's hard for me.
I just wonder.
Using the same props, maybe that, because,
Sure.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of cool. I mean, just brainstorming out loud with you, listening to what you have done and the way you work. I think it would be cool. I could see you doing something like you talked about, taking those pictures of those crystals and going, I'm going to do, you did the winter piece. What would it be like to do a summer piece? Or different colored crystals, and I'm gonna do a whole series of these and make it maybe change the temperatures and the environment. I don't know. I just wonder about that kind of thing. Everybody's different though. What sometimes you catch a spark and you got to go with the fire it makes, until it's burned out.
See, like my solo show, it had a common theme, but it wasn't less. Now my color palette is going to because you're going to know, my color palette is very similar. I'm pretty consistent there. I notice as I'm getting older, my color palette is getting darker.
Really?
Don't know what that means, but that was basically about what it's like to have Asperger's, because I do have Asperger's.
Really?
And so, and I daydream a lot, and that's how I come up with a lot of my pieces. So it's basically about that. So it's basically about living with Asperger's and the daydream world that I live in. I
don't know much about Asperger's.
It's harder to diagnose a female. With Asperger's, it's a brain process. We process things a little bit different. I was extremely nervous whenever I was here, and I was...
When you got here today?
Yeah, when I got here today, and I was about to have an anxiety attack. But change is extremely difficult for me.
Okay. So just making the decision to come do this show could potentially like be anxiety inducing.
Yeah, and
gotcha,
just like
okay.
meltdown, crying
Because it's a big change. Is that what it is?
Yeah, well, it's
Okay.
a new experience.
Yeah,
It's on
very-
the autistic spectrum. So the Asperger's is a little bit more of like an old school term. But I actually got diagnosed the same time my son did.
Really? So your son also?
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, but he's a little bit different than me. Of course, I'm an adult and I've learned to, adapt,
Sure.
in the world, but I still have difficult problems. But he's a little bit harder, for him to process things.
And how old's your son?
He's 14 and
Okay.
he's a really good artist.
Really? Do you feel like that? I mean, I don't know this. Does that have anything to do with it? Like, do you feel like that Asperger's like structures your thinking a certain way to where you can produce art, or you can think artistically in some ways, or does it have anything to do with it at all?
I don't think it has to do with art specifically, but I think it has to do with being able to focus on one thing.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like being like almost obsessive. You know, it's
you gotta
also
kind of
can be-
finish a thing, right?
Yeah,
Like, get in it and get it finished.
like I get obsessed about like a lot of things, and I have to do like a research about everything, and you're just gonna you can block out the world.
And is he like that as well? Is that kind of the same thing?
So it doesn't necessarily have to do with art. It could do with a lot of things. I mean,
Sure. Okay, but it does play into it then. Yeah. That's interesting. Do you think art's helpful in that regard? Like, does it give you something to focus on? Like, is it a relief to have
Yes.
art and a project in front of you? I really don't know a lot about it.
Yeah,
So.
yes, it helps a lot. I do get to where I get so stimulated, that if I do too much of it back to back to back, I have to take a break. You know what I'm saying? But then it almost like I go into like a little depression for a while.
Really? After you finish a project?
Yeah.
Because there's
'Cause
not
it
one
just
right in
takes-
front of you to...
No,
Oh,
it just takes so much out of you.
taxing. Like,
Yeah,
it just...
it
I
takes
gotcha.
so much because you're so far. When I'm saying the adrenaline is going, the adrenaline is going.
Yeah.
Like bam, the heart's beating, the adrenaline, and you're just like, boom.
Yeah. I guess I don't want to pretend to understand fully, but I can relate to what you're saying, even though I don't have that kind of diagnosis. But the taxing feeling, like here in our profession, I'll do a job and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort. I mean, just day in and day out, and it's the same project, and you do this big push, and then you get to the end of it, and it's finally approved and launched. I feel like it took something from me. The hard thing with this is that there's something right behind it. It's like the train cars in this industry. Everything's connected to the next thing, and so there's no time to recuperate. And after you do that for too long, I could say it definitely makes you weary. It's strange too, because it's not like a physical weariness, but mentally weary in a lot of ways. And I will actually feel myself getting physically weaker and tireder, and I'm like, what's going on? And I know it's kind of like a computer that's just been turned on too long. I'm like, it's just too many creative projects on too hard of a timeline, back to back to back to back, and it just starts taking something from you. Strange. Did you ever experience that? Because that's kind of the feeling, like when you finish.
Yeah, and just being around people.
Really, is that difficult?
It could be like if I have to go somewhere where there's a lot of people, it's just it's just too much stimulation. Like if I go to a restaurant, for instance,
Sure.
There's this one restaurant in town, I love it. I don't even know if I want to say the name.
Well,
but
you love it, so,
I love
I mean,
it.
it's
It's
not their-
amazing.
yeah.
It's
Tijuanitas,
Tijuanitas.
yeah.
But do you know how like the building is?
It's long and narrow.
Long and narrow.
Yeah.
Well, when you get in there and it's packed, which usually it is, 'cause it needs to be because it's amazing, and then you got everybody talking.
Yeah.
And it's like nails on chalkboard
I understand.
for me.
I actually do understand. I love that place. That's that's my wife's favorite restaurant.
Well, hey, shout out to Tia.
Yeah, really. It's like she made a list and she's like, it's that place or another place. That's her favorite.
Yeah.
But I get that feeling too. And I'll tell you why. I have a different kind of ailment. I'm deaf in my left ear. And I'm not 100%. I probably have 5% hearing left in my left ear. I'll say that again, left in my left ear. But it sounds like when I plug up my right ear, the way I can describe to somebody is like, it's like I hear people talking in the office next door to me. I can't understand what they're saying, but I know they're talking. So that's what that sounds like. What has happened over the years as it's gotten worse is my whole world exists sort of on the front right of my body. Everything I'm hearing, there's no stereo. So when I go to a restaurant like Tia Juanita's, and it's a long shotgun type building, and the way the seating is, and again, I'm saying this lovingly because we love the place and the food, but for me, my whole world gets consumed by who's sitting next to me. And so I can be with my family, and my wife's like, how are you're paying attention to what's going on there? And I said, it's not that I even want to. I'm having to look at everybody at my table, and I'm sort of I get frustrated. I feel anxious because I can't really be present at the table I'm at. I'm present at somebody else's table. It's a strange thing, but it's been going on for years, and only in the last few years have I started to really analyze this sort of rat in a cage feeling. I'm like, a lot of this just comes from my hearing, and I didn't realize where it was coming from. So yeah, I get it. Large groups of people, because I can't hear, is not enjoyable for me. I feel anxious, and it's mainly because I'm frustrated because I'm reading lips and I'm catching pieces. So I understand. And that place, it's funny because I have the same, it's weird. But the other thing about that too, beyond hearing and what you just described, a lot of people who've come on this particular show have had the same conversation about being anxious in crowds or in groups, and being anxious with change, being nervous about one-on-one like this. And what I find is every one of these people is doing something great in the community. So y'all are all still doing good stuff. I'm amazed by that, because that fear or that anxiety could be completely debilitating. You could just say, I'm not doing this, it makes me anxious, and just don't do it. But you still do it.
I can talk about my art all day long till I'm blue in the face, but I cannot do small talk. You know what I'm saying?
Like how's the weather?
Yeah. Or how's them Cowboys? Ooh, no, Saints. Ooh, sorry. How's them Saints? It's sorry. Anyway, that is very difficult for me. And because for a girl my age, I have such unusual interests.
How old are you?
I'm 42.
42. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just going to say this. I would have never guessed that. That surprises me. Okay.
Good genes. But I have like unusual interests. So my husband's almost like, people don't even know I have a wife, but I do, because I don't want to go to like any of the like dinners and stuff with other couples, because I'm like, well, what am I going to talk about?
Small talk, yeah.
I just like, I'm a big geek, like super nerd. Like I like superheroes and I like movies, but fantasy movies, action movies,
sure,
things like that,
I feel you. I'm with you on all that.
Game of Thrones,
yeah,
and just all that type of thing. And it's just, I'm not really into shopping and just all this, type girly stuff.
Sure, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I was a real big tomboy when I was little, and
I get that. And I gotta say, that's kind of, it sounds a lot like my wife. She and I have similar tastes in films and entertainment and things like that. And we don't go out with a lot of couples. Now, I might be speaking out of turn and saying she might want to, and I just don't know it. But, we don't do that a lot. And the people that we do go with are people we know. And so the small talk is not there. Which I like. I had a conversation with a friend I haven't talked to in probably 3 years just a couple of days ago. He called me because I'd interviewed somebody on the show that we both were friends with at a period in our life. Now, we haven't talked in years, but when we got on the phone, there was zero small talk, and he literally said what you're talking about. He said, I love this. He's like, we don't talk for years, and when we get on the phone, we don't go, so how's the wife? How's the kids? Mm-hmm. We eventually got to that information, but it was like no time had passed. And I thought, how refreshing is that, to have that, just friends like that you're going, there's just sort of a foundation there. We don't need to have this sort of empty chit chat, and we can talk about real stuff like right out the gate. I prefer that any day of the week. And so I get it, the fear of, I don't like that either. I love meeting new people, but to go to, I don't know what it is for me. I'm not big on the teensy tiny sort of filler talk.
The funny thing is that, my husband is the complete opposite. He's the social butterfly and, can talk to anybody at any time in any town, and he knows everyone.
Really?
We went to Nashville and he knew someone.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
go out of town and you run into somebody
you know.
Yeah.
So, which is good in a way. So if we do go somewhere, he can kind of let him take the lead, and I'm just in the corner nodding.
That I can see that. It's funny because I would almost describe my wife and I in a similar way. I would tell you that I have social anxiety big time, but I'll definitely be the one that's talking to people and asking questions and getting to know them. So it's a strange combo platter. My wife is really, really quiet. But at the same time, I would say she's probably more open to experiences than I am because she doesn't have the social anxiety. So it's a strange thing. I mean, so these two opposites within each of us that sort of mismatch complement. I don't know. It's a strange mashup. Do y'all have a similar?
Very much so. He's 10 years older than me, so it even comes down to sometimes, and we do have some music we like, but things like that, it's like very different. We have one person that we're like, okay, we're gonna go to a concert and we're gonna go to this person. Other than that, we have to drag
the other to
the other when
you've got a decade's difference of in
exactly. Yeah.
Well,
so.
I am like you. I like a lot of the same things: comic book characters, superheroes, fantasy, sci-fi, action. I mean, I guess a broad interest. But if I had to tell you what makes me happy and makes me just feel good, it's that kind of stuff. That's the stuff I would rather settle into. And so, pop culture references are a big part of my lexicon when I'm communicating with people. A line from a movie or some kind of reference. Well, what I've noticed, I'm starting to feel older finally, because I'm not much older than you. I'm 44, but I'll be having a conversation with somebody who's maybe in their 20s, and I'll go, well, and I'll say something, and I can tell. I'm like, by their face, like that reference just meant
when you're like
nothing.
Make it so, and they're like,
what?
So what?
Yeah, so what? Right?
Seriously.
For all the folks that don't know, what that reference is.
Star Trek.
Look it up.
The Next Generation.
Oh, man. So good. You're right, though. There is that weird, I'm starting to feel that a little bit of that disconnect, But what is kind of interesting, though, is in pop culture and entertainment, you're starting to see like the resurgence of some of that old 80s stuff, and they're using that as the environment for a lot of films now. So there is sort of an interest. So I guess to some degree, you're seeing a different generation get exposed to that, and maybe you can have some of those little conversations. But it does happen quite a bit with me. I'm like, ooh, that totally did not mean anything to that person. And some people will pretend like they know what you're talking about, or they'll think you said it and they'll think you're weird. And like, why did he say that?
Yeah.
So it is kind of funny. So that's interesting. So you're really, I don't know, I just kind of love hearing that somebody becomes an artist and then just makes stuff that they like. I mean, the stuff you're doing really is born right out of what you like.
Yes, basically. Yeah.
I mean, somebody the other day had posted something about how beautiful it is when you get a piece of art, because you're not just buying the art, you're buying the person. Mm-hmm. And just listening to you talk, especially about, Asperger's and all of that, what you're interested in and the way you've come to your craft, they are, when someone gets a print from you, it's you. Mm-hmm. It's not just some person who had a cool idea. It all gets shaped by everything that's in you. It's kind of interesting.
I think all artists are like that. You're not, when you're someone's painting a painting, it's not just a painting. It's part of them.
Yeah.
Sometimes the blood, sweat, and tears part too,
See, that is the thing that our industry that I think is probably a little dissatisfying, is that when someone gets a logo from mm-hmm. Parker Brand, nobody goes, Oran designed my logo. Nobody feels that way. Nobody goes, he cared about this. He sat down and he thought about what my project was, and then he had his input, and then he shaped it, and he sat and did it, and then now we have it, and I'm so proud to have this logo by Oran. Mm-hmm. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. Nobody does that. At least if they do, they don't do it around here. I've just not experienced that, where someone has a feeling like that. Like, I'm so proud of this. It's a commodity almost. It's like, it's kind of sterilized. It's a little cold. It's like, oh, cool logo, and it gets slapped on everything, which is what it is. It's just strange. I don't know. I kind of envy, if I'm being honest, like when someone looks at your art, your photography, they'll go, oh, such and such did this. Mm-hmm. Or I can tell they did it. And then they're very proud to have it. And they'll say, well, like Lyd, when she talked about you, she said your name, she collaborated with you, she was proud to have it, she was proud to talk about the fact that you did it. And there's something beautiful about that, And so as a creative person on my end, there's like an invisible tear in my eye, because the bulk of what we do creatively just doesn't have that kind of feeling behind it. The rare occasions we'll get an email. We got one, in fact, yesterday, just a couple of sentences, and somebody said, just thank you. It's the first time we've worked with you. It just felt great. The process was good, and we love what we got. And I thought how simple that email was, but I included my wife in it, and I included my other teammates in it. And I was like, look, we got a nice letter. I called it a letter. It's just a couple of sentences, but it meant the world to feel that feeling. And I think creative people, maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's something special about getting recognized. It's not like a pride thing, but it's just saying, you see that there was a creative energy there. You're sort of acknowledging the creativity. It's
kind of funny, embarrassing, and I don't know, all at the same time. Whenever someone buys my piece, I cry, because I'm like, you really want it? Or, it's like, I'm shocked.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Feels like, oh, you love me in a way.
Well, no,
but
you
what
appreciate, because I put so much
that's what
myself in it that
You're
they see them, but they're interpreting their own way. They're probably not even interpreting it
but there's
the way that I intended.
Yeah.
So they're seeing themselves in the piece versus seeing me.
But in a way, I guess in a way what I mean is
because people don't buy art because they see me.
No. But whatever you're doing to them, that is you affecting them. So in a weird way, it's like, I don't know, there's something about love mixed in there, because it's like the way a piece of art makes you feel is touching you somewhere. And so in a way, you're transferring that to them, and they're kind of, when they buy it, they're kind of reciprocating back that maybe not acknowledging you. They don't know they're acknowledging you, but they're acknowledging that it has value. Yeah,
that has value. Yes,
to them in some way, and it's not just monetary. And then you feel that them recognizing that it has value enters you somewhere.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I can
appreciation, value. Yeah, I would. Yeah, exactly. That's the way that it's definitely put. Not necessarily monetary value.
Yeah.
No, that's good too.
And if it makes you cry, it makes you, because it makes you feel, you're like, oh, value. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Validation. Yeah. That the energy that you're putting in there is validated.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very, I don't know. I mean, I think it's essential to humanity. I mean, we want, I don't know. I mean, I'm all about having time alone and being by yourself and having that quiet space. But ultimately, I think we were designed to be shared, and to validate each other and to say to other people, you matter. Mm-hmm. I talk about that all the time, that is the biggest poverty in the world beyond all the other poverties that we have. And it's that not all of us really know that we're valued for who we just are. All of the parts of us, the ugly stuff, the broken stuff, and the beautiful stuff, whatever that is. I mean, it's all of value. And I run into so many people that don't feel valued, So yeah, I can imagine. See, that's the difference, I guess, for me is I guess the commercialization and the commodity of branding and things like that, it is just a little different. It's very rare that it's seen that way. It's just a monetary value. There's not a feeling of specialness, Now I feel it. I'll give you an example. I go to Natchitoches every year, twice a year, for like a personal kind of getaway retreat. And there's a bar up there that I did the sign for. Now the sign is in bad disrepair. It needs a paint job and it needs to be redone completely. It's just faded and stuff. It's old though. I mean, it's getting on 16, 17 years old. And I remember drawing it. I remember painting it. And I remember meeting with this guy when I was younger and just working through it all and how proud I was. I remember what it looked like when it was brand new. So when I go up there and I see it, even though it's in disrepair, I went to eat there. He doesn't remember me and he's busy, but he's still there, the same owner. But when I go and I sit down every year, when I go and I open the menu, they took my sketch and used it for the menu cover. Well, they never changed it. So it's like the old, like before I even painted the sign, it's like the hatchy little thumbnail. That touches my heart. I mean, every time I go, it's like it validates my actions. It validates that I existed. Just nobody else walks by that sign and thinks anything about it. But when I go and have a meal there, it just says, hey, this mattered to somebody. And whether these people here know it or not, it matters to them because they're using this as an identifier to come in this place. And people who live in this town who maybe this is their favorite restaurant, that sign matters to them. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's just something powerful about knowing that what you did was worth something to somebody. I don't know. Mm-hmm. So would you say that's what drives you more than anything? Is that feeling, is that always a part of what you're doing? Or do you feel like I know you do it because you just love the creativity of it, but is there a part of you that does what you do because you're like, at some point someone's going to recognize this and someone's going to value it?
Yeah, definitely. After I'm done with after I'm done with the piece, and I've really, there's really not a lot of places to show in our surrounding areas. So I've really tried to concentrate on trying to, show in, galleries, not better galleries. That's not the word I was looking for, but just, bigger gallery on bigger scale galleries.
Exposed to more people.
Yeah, exposed to more people that, and I'm submitting to them and stuff like that. And just one time I want them to say, yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's for validation.
Sure. I think I get that totally. I don't know. You know, and maybe everybody who puts himself out there has some part of them that's like that. I think one of my guests, his episode hasn't aired yet, but he talked about the feeling of being on a stage. He's a musician, you know, and then he said when you're on a stage, you're in the music. Mm-hmm. You know, you're making it, but you're kind of in the sound that you're making. And when an audience responds, there's no better feeling than that, to look out and see people singing and dancing and their faces, and that you're touching them. You know, that's a type of validation. You know, that what I'm doing matters. I don't know. I mean, outside of art, I think maybe we all need that to some degree.
I mean, why do you post something on Facebook, good news, you know, something that good happened to you? Because you want people to validate that, you know, hit that like button.
Sure.
You know, don't you feel good whenever you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
you know?
right. I mean, you put something out in the world and somebody responds. Yeah, I mean, I could even see that. I mean, definitely with social media, since you brought that up, I mean, I can see how that becomes addictive to some people, especially if you don't have a large social network. Getting a response of any kind is validation that you just exist. You know, I mean, I sometimes wonder about that when I'm shopping and I see someone having like an interaction with a cashier or a service person at a store, and of course with my hearing, I'm like tuned in to that stuff a lot of times, and I'll see it and I'll go, this is an overreaction to what's going on. Like there's no way that this little thing required this much anger or you know, just dragging everybody into it. And I've always wondered if some part of that comes from just, I want to feel like my opinion matters. I want to feel validated. I want everyone to know I'm here. You know, I've always wondered about that. Is there something in there?
I'm more important than you because I'm on this side of the counter.
Yeah. You know, just that it gives us a little bit of control, a little bit of power. We can drag other people into our conversation and get other people to go, you know what I mean, right? And kind of not, you know, you see that kind of out. It plays out all the time. And I don't know, maybe I tune into that because I'm fascinated by it. It's irritating, but I'm fascinated by it at the same time, because I'm like, what is this desire to be seen, you know? Because I ask it myself, you know, because again, why put yourself out there when you could not? You know, like you could really not put your art out there, right? You could just, I mean, I don't even know what the word would be for that. Some people say, oh, well, it's just, if you're not putting it out there, you're not professional, you're a hobbyist. But I mean, why do it? Why do you put it out there? Why don't you just do it and not put it out there?
Because it took me 8 hours to edit.
Yeah, and somebody needs to say, I see it.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that's important? I mean, because I'm wondering, you could just not do it. You could go, well, I like taking pictures. I like creating these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's like, you know, if you work on something, whether it be art or just building a bench or, you know, whatever, just say, hey, look what I did. Isn't it cool?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's basically, like you say, validation again. Whether, you know, just a little, hey, you know. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I do. I mean, I can think about all the times in my life that I've done that, different experiments and different projects where I'm just going, hey, look, I have some value. See, you know? So yeah, I think there's a little bit of that in everybody. I think selfie culture is just that in a nutshell. Why in the world would we? I mean, like I said, I just kind of started using Instagram again, and I'm amazed at how much of that there is. And I was like, wow, there is a lot of accounts that are just pictures of their face. You know, hundreds, thousands of pictures. And I thought, that's interesting that why would you do this? You know, I'm not saying they're bad people or anything like that. It's a curious thing for me. Why would you do this? Why would you put yourself out there that many times when it's all relatively the same? And I guess it's just validation. Validation that I'm admired or that I exist or that I matter for whatever that's worth, you know? And I just wonder what we did before. How did we get our validation before that existed, you know?
That's definitely interesting. Before social media, how did we? And I guess it would be just interacting with people.
Yeah.
You know, just like maybe someone smiling at you or acknowledging your existence.
Yeah.
You know, telling you look nice today, or
or just smiling, like you said. I mean, I talk about that a lot on the show and in my life, that the value of a friendly face or just making eye contact is, I think that those things are pure gold now, because I think that's changed so much. There's so much, people are afraid of each other, afraid to be hurt by each other, afraid if someone's looking at you that they want something from you, someone's smiling at you, that's weird. You know, and is it weird? And I've asked myself those questions. I was like, it's not weird. It's been made to be weird. You know, there was a time when a friendly face and eye contact had great value. And I think perhaps we're probably heading back into that territory again. You know, I've noticed for me, when I smile more and when I'm kinder and when I present myself that way as don't be afraid, the interaction I get is that people will latch on to you, you know, and go, oh, a safe place, because we need more safe places. I would love to live in a world where everybody was safe. Yeah, hearts were safe.
I think it's only weird if you like really stare for a long time and smile and don't blink.
Non-blinking stares. Hey, yeah. Just but it just, even in just a glancing, just in passing, you know, being kind. Tom Trahan talked about the value of being kind in the last episode of the show, and I think he's right. I think he was onto something with that. You know, just why not try it? You know, and Lyd and I even talked about that too.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He unstuck me out of an elevator, so
Tom did.
Yeah, so I appreciate him.
Where were you stuck at it?
Henning House.
Well, at least it was only one story, right?
Yeah, and it was on the bottom floor. So.
Oh wow.
So I texted my husband. I said I'm stuck in the elevator, and he sends a laughing emoji. So I'm not sure about that.
Tom's a great guy, and I think that place is a reflection of him for sure. I'm glad you like that gallery. It seems like a good place for your work. Well, we have this part of the show
this makes me so
this
nervous.
Part, you've heard this part, huh? This makes you nervous? I'm going to shake them up because
it makes me so nervous.
Just keep this in mind. You don't have to answer the question. Maybe the question itself just generates some conversation. So you're not alone in it. But
you don't have anything easy like, what's your favorite movie? Or
yeah, well, there might be in there. I don't know.
Which would be a hard question.
Well, like
actually.
one of these stickers.
I can't. That's right. I can't.
That's all right.
Sorry.
All right. So let's go with the first one. Oh, it's a good one actually. How did your upbringing shape you?
How did my upbringing shape me? Well, I had typical mom, dad, me. I have an older sister. She's like 6 years older than me, and they were able to just let me be me.
Yeah.
You know, crazy imagination. You know, I spent a lot of my times outdoors imagining that I was She-Ra or
She-Ra, yes.
You know, or just, basically my work, just imagination.
Fantasy. Did you y'all live in the country or in town?
No, we lived in town. Sunset Acres is what they called it.
Okay.
We lived in town, so just a lot of times outdoors. I grew up, in the 80s.
Yeah.
So 80s cartoons. I got so excited when I heard when you were Danny were talking about the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Oh yeah.
I was like, what?
Hadn't thought about that in a while.
Yeah. So so I basically had one foot, in the fantasy world, and the other foot, I would read a lot too.
Did you?
Oh, a lot.
Did you start reading at an early age? I
had difficulty reading when I was young, and so I had to go to like a special class to help with reading, and then after that I got hooked and just never stopped.
Did you ever read Choose Your Own Adventure books?
Yes.
Oh man, I miss those so bad. I tell my son about them all the time.
They still have them.
Really?
Yeah, at Books A Million, but because I got some for my son, but they're
Yeah, I used to like the fantasy ones. I told him, I said, mine, I think they're still out in a box in my shed. I would reread them and like say, oh, well, I did this in the last one. I'm going to change it,
Yeah, don't get caught in quicksand.
Yeah,
you
right,
always get caught in quicksand.
Oh, man, I love those things. I had stacks of those. I mean, I could sit there and just pour through those, man. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the 80s was just, I talk about it a lot with my kids because he's fascinated by it. Because it's so different now. I mean, the world has just completely changed. I told him that. I said, well, you were left to your own devices a lot more. You had a lot more time in your own head, I think, than we do now. There was not an outlet immediately that you could just go plug into with like a device or something. I mean, God, not even 10, 15 years ago was it like that.
And I also think that, my dad, he had every man probably wants boys, and, he had 2 girls, but he didn't necessarily, he showed us boys stuff. Like, I shot a bow and arrow, my sister shot a bow and arrow, and I think that kind of, brought us up to be strong women.
Sure.
But not, I was a tomboy, but I also played with Barbies too.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Well,
so
it wasn't
nice
like
mixture.
you probably thought anything about that.
No.
Yeah. See, I believe that too. I think that that's sort of a polarized thing, like where we have to throw people into one camp or another. I was always a more sensitive little boy, but I liked playing in the woods, and I liked a lot of things guys like too, but there were things that I didn't like, and places where I was more sensitive. Nobody thought anything of it. Nobody said anything, oh, he's sensitive, and labeled me, and I'm glad, but I think maybe I worry about the world now because immediately it's like, oh, you must be this way, you must be that way, and you get thrown into these camps.
I know.
I'm hoping that we can get past that now, and we'll just have. I think it's wonderful when somebody has a lot of different traits and they can do a lot of different things.
Yeah, and I find myself, I guess, because of that, being drawn to a lot of strong women characters in movies and TV series, and I want to portray,
Who are you drawn to? Give me an example, like in something that you're like, oh, I love this character.
I'm a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Right on, okay.
My son is actually named after a character.
Oh, really? What's his name?
Xander.
That's my sister's boy's name, and he's also named after Xander from Buffy.
High five to her, man.
Yeah, she was a Buffy fan. My goodness.
Yeah, I mean, anything Joss Whedon does,
Did you like Firefly?
Yes, I did.
Oh,
I'm a brown coat.
Heck, you are. I'm a brown coat, too.
Can we just high five?
I'm
Shiny.
telling you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And matter of fact, my daughter we're watching Buffy together. She's 9. Now, I have to be careful. Obviously, she's about to turn 10, so I can only go up to a certain amount of time because then it's a little, too much. But it's important to show to show her strong women characters.
Sure. Yeah.
Like that. Ripley from Aliens, and
right on.
Just movies and TV shows. Xena.
Yeah,
was a huge Xena warrior princess.
Yeah,
fan. Just like that's my jam.
So, do you find that in modern entertainment, have you found any characters that you'd say are good? I don't know, that kind of represent that for you? Yeah,
I guess like Black Widow and and Marvel, Avengers, and I'm excited about Captain Marvel coming out.
Sure, that looks fantastic.
The first female-led. There was Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
I really liked Wonder Woman. I like her as Wonder Woman. So I'd say in modern. Yeah, I mean, those are more like the fantasy type shows.
Yeah, they're archetypes, though. I mean,
yeah.
I always wonder. I look around for that now. I have to ask that question to myself. Like, are there heroes like what really attracted me as a kid? Like the ones. It's like, see, for me, it's interesting because you and I sound like we have a lot of the same entertainment taste. For me, I remember going to watch Superman when I was a kid, the Richard Donner one with Christopher Reeve. And so that was really my hook. I mean, reading my dad's comics and then watching those types of films when I was a kid. But that one really stuck with me. I loved Superman for a big chunk of my life. But then I kind of laid it down for a lot of years. I really didn't enjoy any of that stuff. I was so busy trying to be an adult that I just left a lot of my childhood behind. then when I got really excited when they were doing the Man of Steel movie. And so I got really fired up. I was like, oh, this looks really great. When I went and watched that, I was like, oh, wow, this isn't what I thought. And I realized I kind of made a little special place for this ideal superhero, this person that represented like good values and was just kind and just and yet still powerful. And what I saw happening in the more modern films is it was more violent. Really, it was just destruction and violence and more focus on the power.
Yeah, that ending fight scene, I think a lot of people had a lot of problem with that because of what you're saying. You know, Superman is supposed to be the ultimate good. You know, he doesn't kill.
Someone that's ultimately powerful but doesn't use that power to that.
He just doesn't kill. Superman
just strange.
Doesn't. And the fact that they went that way... I think a lot of people have had a problem with that. Yeah,
sure. I did for sure. I was struck by it. Actually, if I'm being honest, and my wife remembers this, she's like, "You were kind of depressed about that." I was like, "Oh yeah." I felt like, and I sound like all the people on the internet right now, but I felt like my childhood had just kind of been stomped all over by people who didn't get it. That's what it felt like. So I don't know, but some people loved it. So
Yeah, I think. You know, the DC movies versus the Marvel movies. Me and my husband were having this conversation the other day because he's a huge Iron Man fan. So, you know, the movies is that it seems like the Marvel movies, the characters have more of human qualities.
Sure, they're people.
They're people with flaws, but they're still, you know, good.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, and then DC's more... it's just kind of depressing.
A little more heavy-handed archetypes versus just like bumpy people. Yeah, we went and saw Aquaman last week, I think, and I enjoyed it because it was the first one of those movies where I went, oh, they lightened this up a lot. The character was more...
They saw Guardians of the Galaxy and went,
It was Guardians of the Galaxy underwater is what I enjoyed it, though. I left the theater feeling... happier and brighter, and I was like, yeah, there was some violence and stuff in there, but I felt just like I watched a comic book movie. I was like, that's what I think I just want. I want it to just be fantastical and fun, and I don't need deep-seated anxiety, you know, in the character. No, I like that from time to time, but not for every character, you know. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, did your family like that kind of entertainment? Did your dad like sci-fi movies and...
My dad was really into the action movies.
Yeah, like what? Like what was something you can go, Dad loved
just cowboys and then just action.
Yeah,
you know?
like Die Hard, that kind of stuff.
He would probably like that.
He might have been more like the Death Wish Charles Bronson era, you know, like the pre.
Yeah, he did like a lot of westerns and just kind of action, just anything that had like Predator. Oh, you know, and Terminator and stuff, you know, stuff like that. So yeah, just action, but yeah. So
I just wonder because for me, my I think the reason I was into that is because my dad was into it. I mean, he would watch like Aliens. You brought Aliens up. I remember going into the living room and he was watching Aliens, and I was like, what is this? And I just sat down and watched it with him, and it became one of my favorite films. I was like, this was so much fun, this blend of horror and science fiction. So a lot of my and then of course Dad opens a video store, and I mean I gotta be honest,
I would have lost my mind.
Oh, my whole life was movies for so long. I mean, movies were just a part of it. And I didn't realize what I had. I mean, really and truly, it's only now when I reminisce or when I meet people that remember those times. They remember going to the video store where I go, man, I was really, really blessed and lucky. And what a wonderful experience that was to be sort of buried in every grade of movie, A movies down to the worst, like the cheapest sci-fi horror films, you know?
Yeah, and I have a very unusual, weird obsession with movies. Like, from the littlest, like little. So what I would used to do for fun, was you remember the TV... Remember the TV guide? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of the TV guide, they would list the movies from A to Z. Okay.
Yeah.
So little synopsis, who was and who starred in it.
Yeah.
I would read that. And when we'd get a new TV guide, I would get so excited. I'm like, where's the TV guide? So that grew, as I got older, I would check out at the library like Leonard Maltin's DVD guide.
Oh, wow.
That
really?
was like, huge. You could kill someone with that book. So it listed all the DVDs from A to Z, and I'd read that.
That's awesome.
And all that information has kept in my head.
That's so funny.
So my husband can tell you this, and the first time that I did this, he was flabbergasted. But if anything comes anything that comes on now, before like the 70s, now y'all got to give me something, but like from the 80s on, if something comes on TV and it's a movie, within 10 seconds I can tell you what it is.
Sure.
But the thing is I don't have to have seen the movie.
Because you read,
Because I read the synopsis.
Yeah.
And who's in it.
That's funny. I can relate to that because of working at the video store. Mm-hmm. My dad was he was so hard on us about keeping those shelves clean. And when movies came in, when people would check them in, it was very important, especially on Friday, Saturday night, that we get them returned and back out on the shelf. So we were constantly like, my mind was cued in on what was on those boxes, the picture, and then who's in the box, who it is. He organized things by category, but he also had us organize it by the production company. So back, you remember Coralco and Universal and TriStar Entertainment, whatever it was, we had everything in category, and then each thing was by the production company, and then also by the title. So your mind, as a kid, my mind's like cued into all that stuff. And I'm like you, there are tons of films that I'll go, oh, I know what that is. I never watched it. But because I touched that box all the time, and I could tell, my buddy Dan, who worked with me there, we were laughing about it not too long ago, how we still remember the production company of some of these movies. I'm like, that is nuts. There's no reason we should know that.
Useless. That's what I call it. Useless information. This is completely useless information that I have that will never benefit me in my entire life.
But you got it in there.
But it is in there, and I just love it.
That.
And now I have MIDB.
Oh, yeah, right. So you can look up whatever.
What?
I mean,
and movie trailers on demand on YouTube. What?
Yeah.
That's like one of my favorite pastimes. Don't ask me why. I don't know.
Sure.
But it's just like, it's this weird obsession that I have that is like,
I get that.
eat, and like you talk about the movie covers. There's like iconic movie covers that I just remember, like Carrie.
Sure.
That's
my
like,
son's. My 15-year-old son, that is his favorite movie, the old and the new. His room is horror movie posters, and he's got this awesome Japanese. It was the Japanese movie poster for Carrie, the original. So cool. And I'm like, man, that's so whack that I remember that doggone movie box.
Well, it was iconic. I mean, that's an iconic image. Yeah, I just have all these, just rows of going down it just stuck in my brain,
Isn't that something? Mm-hmm. I think sometimes, again, I think I undervalued what that was doing and what that did in my childhood. And only now, again, especially when I talk to my son, because he's very interested in certain genres, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, I remember when this came out. Like, we were the trailer for the new Pet Sematary was was played the other day at the movies, and I had already seen it, but he was watching it, and when they camera pans back and says Pet Sematary, his eyes got really big. He's like, oh, Pet Sematary. And I was like, yeah, they're remaking it, and so it's neat to, I don't know, get to see things kind of make another generational round, Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I don't know. I love talking about that subject, honestly. We could probably talk about movies all day.
We could talk about movies all day.
Well, let's get on to your next question. I'm very curious to...
okay.
What is the first thing people typically notice about you?
Probably depends on, like, my day job or just out and about.
What's your day job?
I run the gift shop and coffee shop in St. Patrick's Hospital.
Really?
And also the gift shop in Lake Area Hospital.
I've shopped at the gift shop at St. Patrick's Hospital. I probably have seen you there. Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
I used to go to, they had the little chapel upstairs, St. Raphael's, and I used to go every Friday there. And I would, when it would be like a holiday or someone's birthday, I'd usually stop by the gift shop.
I guess they probably, well, let's say not at my day job. Let's say just out and about. Probably how nervous I seem all the time.
Do you seem nervous? You know, I don't know, when you first got here, I maybe picked up a little nervousness, but we jumped right in, so I didn't have time to let it live.
The way that you did it was perfect, because I didn't have time to have any kind of meltdown. I was close. Tears were coming.
Really? Was it that close? Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say this, I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah. That's why I asked for a bottle of water, because I was trying to give myself some time to
compose, huh? Well, you did really good. Is that something you've gotten good at? Like composing?
Yeah, like on the way over here, I listened to like my favorite music.
Yeah.
Just like playlist, and that just helps, calm me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. I believe it or not, I feel a lot of that too, because especially with somebody I really don't know, and what's crazy is most of the people who've come on here I don't know, so I understand that. I don't know what I'd say the first thing people notice is maybe, well, I'll ask you, what was the first thing you noticed?
That I could tell you were a genuine person, like genuinely.
And you could tell that? Interesting. Okay. Well, see,
of course, I've listened to almost all the podcasts too, so I did have. I had a pre. Yeah.
See, like with you, when I opened the door, the first thing I noticed was that you had things for me to look at, which I like that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, good. This is secondary media, because a lot of this is a listening show. So when I get to see something, Ben Von Duke, he had brought his portfolio too, so it was nice after the show to just sit and look at his art, and I was like. It's just like you said, and not to jump way off track of the original question, but it was nice to look at the tangible work. I mean, I could go on his pages and his website and look at that, or his social media and look at it, but to actually have the pages and flip through them, I just felt like, I don't know, more present. So yeah, I saw that. That was the first thing I noticed, but of course, obviously, you're not carrying that your work around with you everywhere you go.
No, I have some business cards, but
yeah. Do you do that whenever you meet people? Do you just say, "Well, I'm a photographer," and do you hand them a card?
No, because I don't want them calling me about their family pictures. I mean, no offense, but
no, I get it. I do.
I don't do that. There's like, I will do it for my sister, and that's about it.
I understand. That's funny. I did senior pictures for my niece, my sister. And my sister's daughter, and they turned out nice. I mean, I liked them, but I don't do that.
I really don't do that. I mean, I'm doing my sister's boys tomorrow, both of them at the same time.
And you do it because you love her. Yeah, that's what it is. That's love. You're doing it because you love her.
That's love. But I'd rather stick myself a fork in my eye. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah. My sister and I were laughing because we were out at the park, and it was a pretty day the day we shot, and. She had like 4 outfit changes, and and I told her, I was like, well, I'm not gonna have anybody with me, so I'm gonna need somebody to hold the bounce card, because the light was just all over the place that day. It was hot, bright, and then it would get cloudy. I was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna be running around fighting the light. But the pictures turned out good, and my sister was like, you could probably do good doing this on the weekend. I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm not belittling anybody who does. There's some people that love doing it. It wasn't so much the shooting that I think I would not like. I was like, I just can see this going poorly. Someone not liking the way I framed something, or just getting so particular to the point where you're just like, okay, this took every ounce of joy I felt out of it. So I'm with you. I feel that. It's like you said, stab a fork in my eye. Whew. Or in my one good ear.
And there are a couple of, and I'm racking my brain for the other lady's name, but there's a couple of photographers in town that I follow that just are absolutely amazing. And one of them, I don't know if you've heard her, it's like Mad Hat Productions or something.
I think her name is Madison Hartley.
Wow. That's all I gotta say.
I thought I haven't. Yes, I have seen her work, and I'll tell you, it's been years since I've really got good eyes on it. But I think it might have even been when she was a student. She was in the student Addy Awards, and I had went to do the judging for that one year, and her work was in there. It was really good.
I can't remember the other lady's name, and I feel terrible right now. But I follow them on Instagram, and I'm just in awe.
Well, there's some wonderful portrait photographers in Lake Charles. Danley Romero's really good. He does a lot of work for a lot of magazines now. I mean, I can always tell.
I do know who that is.
You can tell his work. I mean, now that's what I do think is interesting. There are some photographers where I go, well, I wouldn't be able to tell you that was theirs. Your work, because of what you're doing, really stands out. I can go, oh, that's probably your work. Now I'm even more cued in on it since I've been really focusing in trying to get to pre-know you. And then with Danley, I don't know what it is about his work, and I've never worked with him, but you can spot it. It's the lighting. I mean, he and I've heard this from other people that he's very particular with the way he lights things, and that it may even take a little while to get the lighting just the way he wants it. And I was like, well, it shows because you can spot it for sure. Now, I don't know about, I've seen some of his work where it's like food photography. That's a little harder to me to spot who's what, but the way he lights people's skin, there's something, I don't know what he's doing, but it's special. So yeah, I don't know if when I first meet you, and I've only met you the one time, the first thing I would say was that maybe I could pick up that you were a little nervous, but if you were as nervous as you said you were, you managed that like a champ, because I guess that just melted away really quickly.
Yeah, slightly on the verge of a meltdown.
Oh my God, that's incredible. I wonder how many people are walking around like that though. Because I hear it from everybody. Yeah. I mean, that everybody's got... I don't know if you've listened to Tom's episode, but Tom said the same thing.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
I mean, did that surprise you to hear?
Yeah, because he is such a public figure. It surprised me that he was nervous, you know?
Yeah, he was very nervous.
Yeah.
Lyd said the same thing.
Yeah.
You know? Ben said the same thing. And so I start to go, okay, how many people feel this way? And are just managing it, like right on the edge of like something's right there behind the eyes, just ready to cry. You know, I felt that way. I've shut down big chunks of my life because of that stupid social anxiety, man. There's things I probably would have just enjoyed, but I could not get out of my own head to do it.
Oh, this one looks long.
Uh-oh.
I'm scared.
Look at this. This is right up your alley.
Okay.
No, I'm not kidding. You couldn't have picked a better question. Have you ever watched a movie that inspired you to change something in your life?
No, but I've watched a movie that's inspired me. It's just inspired me.
What is it?
A Memoirs of a Geisha.
I've never seen it.
Which is actually what that piece is.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, the one we were talking about.
Yeah, the one with the geisha in it. There's a scene. Well, the whole movie is absolutely shot beautifully.
Really?
I mean, it's just amazing. God, I can remember the guy who directed. I know the guy who directed it, but I cannot think of his name right now, of course. But there's a scene where she does a snow dance. It's on a stage, and it's about a girl who lost her lover and she wants to kill herself or something like that.
That's the plot of
the plot of the dance that she's doing.
Gotcha.
And she has a red umbrella and she's dancing, and it's and then at the end the snow starts to fall. And I just love the scene of that movie, and I'm like, I've got to capture that in a photograph. And
so that's what that inspired you to do that piece. Wow.
Yeah.
So it definitely is that a style that you would do again in a different way, like maybe another, or is that one of these things where it's like I just did this one?
Well, I think just that one, because that one's based on that scene, and I also, you know, it's weird, I have to bring this up, but in the world that we live today, cultural appropriation.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, I know you can't see my face in the picture, which I do a lot. You know, you can't see my face because I want you to interpret it. But I'm basically, you know, portraying a geisha.
Sure. Right,
and I don't want to offend anyone. I mean, I don't know. It's like a fine line, but I love, that culture. And
yeah, I understand that because there's several cultures that I've really loved to study, and I mean, they're represented. I mean, a lot of those things are around here in my office. I love the artwork and a lot of the religious symbols in Catholic culture, but I also love Tibetan culture quite a bit. And if you look around here, you're going to see a mix of both things. I mean, in various formats, and even some of my spiritual practices come from both worlds. When I'm doing something that comes from Tibetan beliefs or culture, I've wondered sometimes like that, like prayer flags. I'll give you a great example. The colored prayer flags that people hang, red, yellow, blue, green, and they have like prayers written on them. Well, those mean a lot to those people's beliefs. I mean, if you go up into the Himalayas, you're going to see prayer flags everywhere. It's important. It's not a novelty. We've made it now. You can go on the internet and buy some prayer flags and hang it up. And I think that those can be seen as sort of like hippie culture, and I hate to throw that out there like that, but that would be like people going, prayer flags, whatever. It's just a decor. But my family and we hang prayer flags in our oak tree. And I think sometimes people are like, why do you have those up there? But we don't hang them until we've all had a chance to think about what they mean. What do we want to pray for? What do we want to go out into the world? So there's some thought that goes into that before we hang them. So when we see the wind blowing through them, it really does mean something to us. But on the outside, I do worry that I hate to say it, but I go, the same thing you're talking about. I go, oh, they're just, they're making novel something that means something to somebody else.
I'm not, to me, as long as you're not, as long as you're not making fun of the culture.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
If
you're honoring it or appreciating it or showing your love for it.
An homage.
Yeah. So, I made that piece. That piece is a couple of years old, so it wasn't necessarily thrown, that term thrown out as much as it is now. And I thought about it after it had been on. I was like, ooh, maybe I need to think that through a little bit. But then I was like, no, because this is directly inspired by that scene.
Sure. I think you're probably being sensitive, which I am too, to that's a response to what's going on in the world. Because look, it's the difference. Like if you dressed up in some traditional Native American garb and you did a nice piece that was an homage or something with your style, and you did, some triple exposure stuff and like made a cool scene, and you're like, hey, I'm not Native American, but I did this piece and I did it out of respect. That's hugely different than opening up Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition and there's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl, in a bikini wearing a Native American chief's headdress. And I think that to me, I see that as maybe misappropriating someone else's culture. Again, that's judgmental, but that's just those are the only things I can think of, the huge difference between those two things. So, yeah, I get that. I worry about it too, though, especially when we're doing design work here. If we're doing, especially in Louisiana, a lot of the clients we work for are hypersensitive to making sure everyone is represented. And that's very, very, very difficult. I've almost become less of a fan of forced inclusiveness. I mean, I'm all for inclusiveness, but forced inclusiveness to me seems very inauthentic. It's like, well, there's not enough, I hate to say it, but there's not enough, there's too many white people in this picture. Or there's too many black people in this picture. Or there aren't enough... I don't know. We get that all the time in advertising, like making sure everything's tailored. And when I look at a lot of the things that are produced, I go, well, that's not actual reality. This isn't what we're seeing when we're shooting these pictures. So I get wanting to send a message out there, but I don't know. I would worry about the same things. We definitely worry about it. Do you like those films like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon?
So I know it's a very famous book, but visually it's very stunning.
Yeah, right. That's why I brought it up, because it has some of those sensibilities of stark contrast, lots of color.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I've seen that, but you know, I like the guy that just did the Fish movie.
The Fish movie. Uh-oh. I don't know what
I cannot believe. I'm so embarrassed because I'm like, I'm a movie expert. No, I'm
that's
just
good.
on the spot.
Fish
and I'm like,
movie. I don't know which one.
The one that got nominated for the Oscar last year.
Oh, the Shape of Water.
Yeah, the Shape of
Guillermo
Water.
del Toro.
I was trying to say Guillermo del Toro, but I could not say his name properly. Yes, he's like a visually stunning director.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so like anything, you know, like that, those types of movies, those are very inspiring.
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, my daughter really likes him too. For Christmas, she got I can't remember the name of the book, but they have a big book of his work, like it's all his notes and sketches and things like that. I wanted to read it because I was like, oh man, he is visually stunning. Like the character creation is just so unique, and the color. I don't know. I like that kind of stuff. I think sometimes people want to go for hyper real, and I love things that are just fantastical and just lots of color, and that's what I see in his work. You know, just a lot of color play. In fact, my son, my littlest boy, we watch, he has 2 animated series on Netflix, Trolls and 3 Below. And he's sort of creating a whole animated universe over there. And so if you like his work and you haven't seen those, you'd probably dig them. They're really creative, and you get to see a lot of the same character design and just fun world building stuff going on in those. Do you have a favorite, since we're talked about movies, and I just want to know, do you have a favorite science fiction movie or like fantasy film that you're like, this is my favorite? This is the one I go to if I had to pick one.
I can't pick just one. Now, you know, I like Serenity.
Oh, yeah. You
know, but you kind of have to be in the, you know, in the fam, the Firefly fam to really appreciate that.
I miss that show so much. That was such a good time.
Yeah.
As a world that just felt like home.
But just like the Alien series, I mean, how can you know, the first one and the second one, how can you really go wrong with that, you know? And just, you know, love Terminator.
Yeah.
You know, those type of things. Yeah.
Those were cutting at the times those come out. They were just so different. They just jarred themselves into your brain. To me, they just wedged right in. Especially Terminator and Aliens. Those two just touched, and Predator. Those are kind of just in a specific like horror science fiction genre. That was sort of to me, it was a new thing.
And practical effects.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's just a whole. Just practical effects versus, you know, all this, which is crazy because I Photoshop. Yeah. But, you know, talk about hypocritical. But, you know, it's just something about, you know, it really being there, you know, and
Yeah, no, I get it. I feel that way. Sometimes I'm amazed by special effects, computer generated effects. Like Guardians of the Galaxy. I love Guardians of the Galaxy. Those are great. But I think what it is because they're leaning so heavy on the characters and the way they've built them up that the special effects are there, and I know those artists just work their butts off to produce that stuff.
Like the old Jim Henson, you know, like the Dark Crystal,
they're
Labyrinth.
doing that now.
Yeah, they're doing a prequel on Netflix.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and they're supposed to use practical effects, so yeah.
But you're right, Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, those are in a different... Now they wouldn't make those movies now. It would all be CGI characters. And who knows, I won't be surprised if that doesn't happen someday, you know. But yeah, I have a few remakes that I've thought, I didn't really care for these because of and it's weird, the effects just took me out of it, you know. But you're right, the old practical effects really just stuck with you. They were a little scarier. It felt like, it could really... Do you ever watch horror movies? Or was that ever in your...
I do watch horror movies. I read a lot about horror movies. Once again. And watch trailers, so that's why I knew that Pet Sematary was coming out.
Right.
He has 3. Stephen King has 3 movies that are coming out this year. One called In the Tall Grass, which is based on a novella that he wrote, and you got Pet Cemetery and It Chapter 2.
Oh yeah, they are doing that. That's right. I'd read that somewhere. I haven't seen the remake of It yet. So
Me either.
A lot of times my wife and I we love watching TV and movies together. We have a lot of the same interests, and a lot of times we'll not watch those things because the kids are around.
It's hard with
I'm
kids.
like, I'm not going to watch it. It's
Yeah.
scary. It's going to freak them out.
I really liked, I don't know if this is more like suspense, but in the Quiet Place.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed that.
And Bird Box was pretty good, but
I liked it.
I liked in the Quiet Place a little bit better than Bird Box.
I did too. I did too.
My husband really doesn't like horror movies too much, so I kind of, like I said, read about them more than anything. So.
Yeah. Well, when I was a kid, it was more, and I guess every generation's got their own thing, but for me, I liked horror movies. I liked horror characters. Like I liked Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and just other characters like that. What I have seen, and now I don't really watch a lot of horror, is it's not as character driven or one villain driven. Now it's a lot of torture, kill, like
and it's also leaning towards the paranormal more now. Have you noticed?
There's a lot more spirit stuff, and I don't like. I hate this. I don't know what to call it, but I always call it like torture kill movies, like Hostel and Saw and all that stuff. I'm like, this just isn't. To me, it's just different. I don't know why it's different, but I know it's all ultimately the same gross stuff. But there was just something a little more disturbing about it psychologically. And I don't know, I just like those archetype characters, those just big like Leatherface and stuff like that,
Yeah, I've seen all the 80s horror movies. I had an older sister, so that kind of helped that aspect of watching all those things. So
well, it's funny too, because I hear a lot of that now, and then it's not a new subject, but saying that entertainment makes people more violent and games makes people more violent and stuff. And I think on one hand, I would go, maybe they're right about that. But then I have to go, okay, take a minute and look at your own childhood. And I go, well, I watched some crazy crap, crazy horror movies. And I grew up around any type of movie. I wanted to watch. Did it? I haven't done anything crazy.
Yeah.
So I go, I don't know. I have to wonder if it's that or if it's just the person. You can't take that off the table, I guess. But
I do think that there's something being said about being desensitized.
Maybe so, yeah.
And not necessarily movies. I think it's more of like the real life things that you can see on the internet, nowadays.
Yeah, right, I gotcha.
Real videos.
Consumption of actual violence.
Actual violence,
yeah.
Being desensitized, because I even find myself being desensitized to certain things that you see on the news and stuff like that. It used to shock me, and now it doesn't anymore.
Well, yeah, I talk about this on one episode with Paul Gonsalon, and I talked about this National Geographic that really affected me when I was like 8 years old, and that stuck with me, and still to this day it changed my life. Truly, it changed my brain, what I read in that magazine, and it's just never left me. And it was real human tragedy, and it was one thing, one magazine with one real human tragedy that just stuck around my whole life. I watched thousands of horror movies that didn't do that. So you're right. I think that overconsumption of this real human tragedy and real pain and suffering can either drive you into a depression.
Yeah.
I think that's partly getting back to this show. It's kind of the whole point of this show is like, hey, there's good people out there dealing with hard things, still trying to do good stuff. So if we focus on that a little bit more, we don't have to, tune into all of this craziness that's out there. Maybe day by day we can all get a little bit better.
I listen to mostly podcasts in the car.
Yeah,
really.
Me too.
I do. Have you listened to Horror and Hops?
Not yet. I put it in my favorites the other day. I'm going to start listening to it.
I love them.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
You have a fan if you're listening.
Yeah, I've heard it's good.
It is good. The Heredity episode is legendary.
as I understand the format is that one of the people on the show doesn't watch horror movies, right? Yes,
right.
So they kind of react
and,
to.
Yeah, and they have him recap it. So he's kind of steering along but they throw in some facts and stuff, which I love because
Sure.
I'm like, yeah, like, give me more facts about movies. So yeah, some of the stuff I've seen, some of it I haven't seen, but I don't mind, you know?
Yeah.
So, because I probably won't watch it anyway, but yeah, it's great.
Well, there's something like that. I love things like that where it almost helps you to enjoy the show a little bit more. A lot of times my wife and I will watch something together and then we'll sit and talk about it and go, okay, what did you take away from that? And what did I take away? And then we'll go, after we've done that, then we'll go look it up and go, what are people online saying about this? To see if we're even close to the general consensus. But yeah, that's a lot of fun. I think film can be fun. I mean, it doesn't, if anything, to me, it's just a stimulator. You can think about it. I like to watch some things for just the joy of it and just take it on face value alone. And then other things I love to just sit and think about. I mean, I love it when a movie sticks around. I'm thinking about it for days and days and days. Yeah. Well, so if people want to find you and get in touch with you or buy your art,
Yes.
What's the best way for that to happen?
I have a Facebook page. It's Heather Arsement Photography. And I'm on Instagram, Heather Arsement. And I do have a little Etsy shop that has a few prints on it. So you can find that through my Facebook page, Heather Arsement Photography. So, but that's mostly like my local stuff. You know, the King Kong and the other stuff, and and a couple other little things.
Okay, well, we'll put links to all of that in the description of the show. Do you have anything coming up, like where you're going to have your work presented, or what's your next big project that you have planned?
Like I said, I'm sending call for artists. So you go online, you look for a call for artists, and you send your proposal to the different galleries. And each one of those costs money. So, I have to be kind of, try to figure out which one's worth it and stuff like that. So I've been trying to look for a gallery to represent me. And other than that, just hopefully make some art.
Yeah.
So,
well, you're doing it. The one thing that I think is really awesome is that you're doing it. You're not just making the pieces to sell. That's a great validation, but you're doing it for the joy of it. I love that. I don't ever lose that for sure. I'm
trying, and the whole reason that I'm trying to sell some things on Etsy is to make money to be able to send stuff for galleries. You know what I'm saying? So it's all going back into the thing. And another thing that I have coming, well, I'm going to try to work on this year, is I want to go back to the old traditional photography. It's called Sinograph.
Okay.
And you make negatives, so you can make digital negatives. Well, obviously back then they had regular negatives, but you can make digital negatives and use the sun to expose your digital negatives.
Oh, you're going to do that?
I'm going to try.
That's cool.
Which is going completely opposite of what I do.
Well, you're experimenting.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, who knows where you're going to land? And who knows, it may never land anywhere. I
might hate it. I might say, no, I love my Photoshop too much. I love my editing too much. But I'm you know what I'm trying to figure out? Do I love photography or do I love the end result? And I think I already know the answer, but I'm still going to explore.
That's wonderful. Just keep exploring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love you just